So this is really where the rubber meets the road. And this really talks about, for lack of a better, as I thought terms, I thought about this and I said, this is really about bullying. You have your standards, you have your core values, you know your morality, you know your ethics in terms of how you're going to handle yourself. And people are always coming up against you and they're bumping you. They're bumping you. They're testing that standard that you have. And there's really there's a lot of this bullying goes on out there in relationship to your core values. And that's why it's so important to know in your knower who you are, what you believe, and where you're going. And then from that, then you can measure things. And that's really what this university learning objective is all about. Is you be able to pick things up and say and look at them from your particular view. It's not saying that you're going to change your view, but to look at them for your particular viewpoint and say, okay, that's how that fits, and go from there. So one of the things that you really have going for you in relationship to this whole thing about bullying is the Federal Whistleblower Act. In 1989, that what was going on, at least in the federal government, is somebody wanted to raise their hand and say, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is ethical. If they raised their hand and did that, their job is at risk. So the federal government then set up this whole process of establishing a whistleblower act. So if you did that, you have a process. There's an administrative procedure you can go through to establish yourself as a whistleblower, and then you have protection from reprisal. And so the question was Snowden covered? Did Snowden need to? They call him a whistleblower, but in truth and fact, Snowden isn't a legal whistleblower. He did not go through the process to become a federal whistleblower, the administrative procedure. People have been calling him a whistleblower, but by law, he is not a whistleblower. He did not follow the law in releasing that information. Now, that was a decision he made. Maybe he made that decision, said, if I follow this process, this information won't get out. But he actually, what Snowden did, he violated the law. And that's why people are saying it's treasonous what he did. And that's why people are on the other side. It's a treasonous act against the United States by releasing that information. So, especially because he was a federal employee, even though he was a contract employee, he still fell under that Federal Whistleblower Act, and he could have called this number and could have been covered by that. So if we look at this whole whistleblower, let's think about the microbiologist at the peanut butter company. Would that microbiologist, he or she, been covered? Now, the problem is, if you look down here, this is the new Food Service Act, which was adopted in 2011. Now, prior to that time, may not have been covered, but it says here protects employees of food manufacturers, distributors, packers, and transporters. The reporting of violation of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. To have salmonella in that peanut butter is a violation of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So you could then report that. There's the process. You got 180 days to file a report, and there's your allowable remedies. You back pay and all of this. They cannot take reprisals. So if you had the documentation, you could take that documentation through the whistleblower piece and actually take care of that. So you'd be protected. I think but the CFO for Health South, was he covered? I would suggest that Health South was covered too, this CFO. But if you listen to what that guy says and watch that video, it's interesting how this rationalization occurs within their mind. And we're going to talk about some of those things. And the question then becomes, but I would suggest that this person also would have been covered under the Whistleblower Act and could have brought this to somebody's under the Securities Exchange Commission, because that was what was going on. They were defrauding their investor by padding the bottom line, making it look like they had more money coming in than there wasn't coming in. And by doing that, then the investors weren't leaving them, and it was there was not. You can see that area there right here, how much money they didn't know. so they didn't know. So you could do that. But then the question is, these are really obvious how these things really start. How in the world does somebody start slipping a little bit sideways and start compromising basically they are? And it's just a slippery slope. Just this once. I'll just do it this once. And that'll be all right. I won't do it again. I won't ever do it again. Just this one time. And just that simple step moves that center line, which is your foundation, moves that just so infinitesimally that the next time it might be easier to do it. And then the next time it's easier, just that once. And again, somebody, the bullying, so well, it's all right. Just do it this one time. Just this one time. Help me out. Take care of it. Don't let the boss know. Just help me out here. This one time. I won't ever ask you again. And that's how it gets started. The embezzler's motto. I'll put it back. I will put it back. And in fact, if you look at most embezzlers, they end up putting it back. They take it, put it back, take it and put it back, take it and put it back, take it, can't put it back, take more, can't put it back, and eventually, it's the old slippery slope. And they have rationalized in their mind why they need to be doing this, why they can use this money, and how that works, and they'll put it back. They don't intend to steal money. They don't see themselves as a thief. They're just borrowing the money. They're putting in an IOU, may not even put in an IOU, but they don't see themselves as a thief, which they really are. And, who's going to know? If I do this, who's going to know? If I pick this up and I put this in my pocket, nobody's going to know. They're not going to know. And that, but you know, in fact, yourself, that you've stepped across the line and all of that. And the rationalization. I deserve this, or they owe me, or in this case here, again, going back looking at Hitler, they had rationalized this in their mind from a Darwinian point of view that these people were, as far as natural selection, they were the kind that would be selected out, survival of the fittest. These people were not fit to survive, and that they were helping the Darwinian system along by selecting these people out. And they'd rationalize that. And therefore they weren't killing people, they were helping the system, and they were making the world better by doing what they'd done. Granted, that is a extreme example, but it's the kind of example that happens. People rationalize, I can do this and that's all right, it won't matter, and that's how they really get into that. As you go around, as you get employed, you're going to find a code of ethics. This is a law enforcement code of ethics, but you're going to find codes of ethics wherever you go. Standards of operation and how you're to conduct yourself. As your employer, I'm sure, has mission and vision, core values. If you dig deep enough, you're going to find those mission, vision, core values. And those core values, understand, as we mentioned, they represent the morals of the company, which represent the ethics, the ethical way that the company's going to deliver things. There's a ethics litmus test that's in there. I would suggest you look at that ethics litmus test and just kind of look at that and see what you think about that. Also, in there, this is really an interesting book, and I've got a link to it. It's the Global Fraud Report. Look at this thing. I mean, this talks about fraud in business and what people are saying around the world in terms of how much fraud is going on. Things being stolen, electronic invasion and all that. It's like 60, 70, 80% in some of these countries that these companies are reporting this. So what does this mean to the core values of the people that are working there and the company itself? And it's something that companies are really struggling with. And in fact, it's gotten to the point now that a company will actually look at somebody and say, what's most important to me in terms of this employee may not be that they can do the job. It may be it's related to their ethics and their integrity and their honesty and those foundational that I know I can trust them. How do you know you can trust them? And finally, there is a student code of conduct. This is really the student code talks about the ethics for yourself, how you're expected to conduct yourself at the Boise State University. There's some, if you find out, there's some, and to violate these code of conduct can result in disciplinary action against you as a student, and also disciplinary action or dismissal, suspension, dismissal, and it also, admittedly, it applies to your lecturers. There is a code of conduct in terms of how we're to carry things out, how we're to interact with you, and how we're to do things. And I can tell you beyond that, I see myself as having some of how I relate to the class, which might be different than anybody else, but it comes out, basically, I tell you, when I was in college, I had professors do certain things to me, and although I didn't say, boy, if I ever get to that place, I'm not going to do that, but I realized that I'm here now, and I know what it felt like to have those kinds of things done to me, and it felt how, and I thought, I don't think I want to have those kinds of things happen to my students. So with that, that's again a brief flyover. Look at the videos, look at the material. This is a long lesson, so I tried to keep this short.